What's the deal? What's the deal? You already know what it is. Back in this one, another video to pump out to my young boys, maybe girls, but no, today we out here in the field with it. You know, getting into some scripts. So yeah, we just really about to jump right into this. Really about to just dive in.
Alright, what's the deal? You know what it is. It's your boy, the chosen one, God's chosen son, and Born Row. You know, coming to pump out some good old content to y'all. You know, like I said, this Bible study #1, man. #1 documentary, #1, man. We out here, obviously, in the nature. It's kind of free. It's kind of chilly out here, man. It's good. 50 degrees. They say it feel like 46 up here.
Michigan weather.
Michigan weather, man. We ready for it to break. But man, we just out here reading, man, going through our scriptures. The scripture, the chapter I went to, I've been reading out of Romans recently, so you know, I decided to take it upon myself this time to read through Romans chapter 10. And you know what I got from it, very pivotal stuff as far as talking about grafting in the Gentiles. You know, a lot of people within Israel being cut off from it's compared to an olive tree, like the roots of Israel. You know, a tree basically, it got roots, it got a stem, it got branches, and you know the roots is planted within you know, having the faith of God, having the faith of Christ, and him being able to do all things for us. You know, that would be the root of your faith. And then obviously stemming out would be the branches of that faith, which would be everybody within the whole conglomerate of biblical believers, right? I.e. the branches. But in these scriptures, it talk a lot about this olive tree. You know, in nature, trees lose branches, right, and whatnot. And it's actually kind of ironic, because I've been reading this story recently, and it talk about grafting branches onto other plants and trees. And basically the way it work is when you take a certain species of tree or plant, you can cut that branch off and you can graft it into a broken branch of another tree or plant species, and that type of fruit can grow off of the branch. The fruit that tree provides can grow on that branch, right? So it's kind of crazy, but it's crazy because, you know, within the faith, within our people, it's a lot of people, you know, who it's just a lot of layers to it. You know, you have people that come into the faith, you know, later in life. You have people that's raised into it, and people who you know, they raised up in the churches, they raised up in fortunate situations, they raised up with good families to bring them to it. You have people that stray away from the faith, you know, that would obviously be cut off, and they, you know, their branches fall off. And a scripture that spoke out to me within this chapter, let me read it. Which one was it? Let's see. Okay, it's Romans 10, chapter 11. Verse 11, my fault. It say, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. But rather through their fall, salvation is coming to the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. So basically, what I get from that is basically saying, you know, the fall of Israel through certain individuals in Israel, through, you know, their disobedience, you know, leaves room for Gentiles to be grafted in through their obedience to God, when they, you know, find out about the Lord and start praising Him and living by the law, statutes, and commandments. And then at the end it says, you know, to provoke them to jealousy, right? Meaning that, you know, a lot of people, you know, we see these Israelite camps and whatnot, and they be so against, you know, the white man or the Gentiles and whatnot. And it's kind of ironic, because, you know, as our people, you know, fall away from the faith, you know, we still be having elected within Israel in the faiths too. But as the people, you know, they get divided through the wheat and the tare, you know, other individuals through other nations can get grafted in through their belief, which, you know, lead a lot of our people within the faith to jealousy through that. You know, you got a lot of people with the narratives, you know, Gentiles, all Gentiles are the devil, they gonna go to hell, whatnot. It's a lot of people with these extremist beliefs, and I would, it's like honestly ironic reading this verse, because I would attribute that to jealousy. Because maybe, you know, for whatever reason, maybe they not doing what they supposed to do. We keep seeing a lot of these preachers and a lot of these spiritual leaders get quote unquote exposed. So, you know, it's a lot to it. Another, you know, going on to verse 12, it says, now if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more is their fullness, right? So it's basically saying, you know, it's basically saying, if you grafted in, you know, if the fall of these people from the faith, if the fall of these people, hold on one second.
No, I see what you're saying as far as, you know, kind of like the jealousy thing. Definitely, like a lot of these camps and stuff, when they get the, like you're saying, we're talking about the white man is the devil rhetoric and all of that type of stuff. You know, it does come from a place of jealousy, because, you know, those people have, you know, inherited everything that, you know, was supposed to go to us. But, you know, it's interesting because I'm in Jeremiah, and this kind of talking about like the sins of the father, where I'm at right now. But yeah, through the sins of our fathers, and, you know, the shortcomings of Israel and what we've done, again, we've essentially given our place unto the Gentiles. And, you know, we've essentially changed how the structure is of, you know, how it's supposed to be with Israel leading the nation and the Gentiles supposed to be following, because they do have a place in the kingdom, but, you know, it's just not the place that they currently have within this system. So, yeah.
Yeah, you brought me back full circle to what I was getting into when I was reading verse 12. Basically, it's saying, you know, the Gentiles, you know, and a lot of the other nations, they're given dominion over us, and they given positions over Israel, right? And they given these positions because of our disobedience to the faith as people, as all of Israel. So it's basically saying, you know, what's the fullness to come for us? And
it might be 12 or 1.
Yeah,
that's gonna go for a minute too. That's the Cyrus every Saturday.
But hopefully y'all can, you know, you can hear us. But yeah, basically saying how many more greater things will God do for us when, you know, we come back to the law, statutes, and commandments, and for the elect that are of that olive tree and of those branches of holiness, right? So yeah.
Facts. You keep going, I go into some big stuff. I wonder where that be coming from. It says like a test. They do that every Saturday, to test to make sure the sirens work in case of it's an emergency. But I feel like they just started doing that recently, which stay woke, because why they testing sirens all of a sudden? You know, over the last few months they've been testing these sirens every Saturday.
I used to hear it here and there back in the day, but I don't be hearing it like every it's supposed to be the first Saturday, right? I don't be hearing it every Saturday. That is
I hear it every Saturday.
Let me see. Another scripture that I thought was quite interesting was verse 16. For the first fruits be holy, the lump is also holy, and if the root be holy, so are the branches. Right? So basically saying, you know, if the people within the fold, you know, if Israel, you know, they on their grind, they doing what they supposed to do, they exalting the name of the Lord, the name of Christ, you know, the rest of anybody else who comes under the fold or who is already in, and you know that maybe they struggling, they gonna in turn be holy themselves, because you lay the foundation through having good people who are biblical scholars doing the work and really you know, doing the work of God and being obedient. So, you know, what's our saying in the job? Speed of the leader, speed of the crew, right? So I kind of look at it like that. Also, you know, if the roots be holy, then so are the branches. You know, so everything, you know, the Bible talk a lot about your fruits and what you planting and planting seeds and what they shall bear. So, you know, it just goes to say, if you plant seeds of unholiness, and those roots gonna be unholy. You know, you're gonna be stuck in a situation of you know, misleading people, misleading yourself, sinning against your own flesh and your own spirit. But when those branches are, what's up with you, player? How you doing?
Make sure y'all double tap it with a like as y'all coming in.
Yeah, for
road,
sure.
The road to 1K.
Facts. Road to 1K. You got to get my man's born road to 1K. Get this word out here. But yeah, man, just like, you know, if you planting seeds that are holy, you know, you being a good person in your community. You know, you being an advocate and a revolutionary within your community in order to help change, in order to bring people closer towards the truth. You know, you plant those seeds within people, you know, eventually they're gonna take root and spring, and the people that you know.
Appreciate you for the sub, KJ.
Yep, and the people that resonate with that word, you know, everybody you talk to and plant a seed with, it's not gonna resonate. You know, some people, they are soldiers of darkness, right? So, you know, but you know, the blood is on our hands if we don't spread the word and plant those seeds. But when you have a healthy foundation and you rooted in this book, in the Bible, and in the teachings of Christ and the Lord, then, you know, those few people, some people, you know, may have a turning point in their life. Something I had to realize was, you know, that turning point for everybody, it's not instant. You know, sometimes somebody might think of something you said 3 years down the line, and they might hit you back up and be like, I remember you said this, man, and it finally clicked, right? I just thought about this, I went through this in my life, and it finally clicked. So, you know, you got to think about what a seed is. A seed, it take time for it to sprout and grow in different plants. It's quite ironic we talking about, you know, trees and grafting and plants and seeds. You know,
roots.
all of these things is common like metaphors within the Bible. And it's ironic because, like, different plants and different seeds, plants grow at different times. Like I talked about this before. A bamboo plant spends, like, I don't know how many years, but it spends a lot of years growing downward. So you don't see the growth on the surface, and then boom, all of a sudden it spring up and start just growing super tall after a couple of years of being planted. But it grows downwards first. So, you know, plants is just different. And that's kind of how we are spiritually a lot of the times. That's how we are spiritually a lot of the times. You know, we had to take time in order to let those roots fester. But you want to plant your seed with righteous proportions. So, you know, the branches is holy, the trees is holy, and that in turn makes you know, obviously the metaphor would be your character is holy, the way you move, you know, the way you live, you're practicing good things, and you know, discipline, reframing, you know, coming into prophetic word, teaching, and all of that type of stuff, ministry, and all of that, man.
I think about the scripture where it say, you know, you raise up a child in the faith, in the spirit or in the faith, they don't depart from it when they leave. When I think about that kind of go, you know, into the same thing. We just talk about being rooted, like all the tree metaphors, being rooted into the faith, planting seeds, letting them grow. But if you are rooted in the faith, and then, you know, you inevitably bring children into this world, you know, it's important to raise up your child in the word. Yesterday, or even anything that you do, all your relationships, because yesterday I was just talking about, you know, when it comes to our relationships, and, you know, making sure that the Most High is within our personal relationships. And, you know, I'm talking like, you know, romantically, talking about like if you got a partner or whatever, it's important to make sure that you constantly are watering that relationship with fruit, watering it with, you know, nutrition of the Most High, basically, essentially the word. Because if you are not, and this is mainly to the men, because y'all are the heads of y'all households, so if you aren't constantly watering that relationship, praying over that relationship and putting the spirit into that relationship, then you are leaving that relationship essentially open for, you know, corruption and for the devil to operate. So you want to constantly be making sure that you watering all of your relationships, all of your plants that you have, all the people that you've planted seeds, you know, you want to water those. But you also, you know, to add balance to it, you don't want to be casting pearls among swine. So, you know, you wouldn't take, you know, no water and you wouldn't try to plant a seed into sand, you know, and expect it to grow. That can't happen, can it? Well, sand is technically dirt, but you can't do that, right? No, you can't do that.
Maybe with a cactus.
Yeah,
maybe with a cactus.
Yeah.
You can't go try and plant in a sakura blossom in some sand. It's not gonna work. That's not its environment, right?
Facts. So, you know, you don't go casting pearls among swine, but you know, those who are seeking, you know, the Lord, those is the relationships, you know, you want to water those seeds. So definitely make sure you want to constantly, and then again, heavy on into your personal, you know, intimate relationships, because, you know, fellas, we got to sit up there and we got to keep our hands on the steering wheel, because a lot of times we get lax, you know, when we take our hands off the steering wheel and, you know, we stop watering that relationship. You want to pray over your relationships when you get into it with somebody that you just meeting or whatever. You know, you want to pray over that union that y'all have, and then you want to continuously pray over it and continuously water it. So
yeah, and the magical thing about the word is a lot of the times, you know, these things and metaphors within it in comparisons to life, you know, they span across plenty of different subjects and topics. Like if we just take the whole planting seeds, watering your seeds with you know, things of holy proportion, biblical proportion, that goes as far as, you know, the seeds you plant could be in your community, and then that's spreading out throughout your community. That's the trees and the branches, right? Or it could be yourself. The seeds you plant could be simply stuff like going to the gym, you know, reading your Bible, you know, eating healthier and whatnot. And, you know, the tree and the branches would be basically the effect, cause and effect. That would be you feeling better, you know, feeling rejuvenated, you know, feeling more, having more energy, you know, feeling and to go out and water the bigger seeds that you plant within your community. Or like Ro has said, you know, your children, you know, that's like a direct, that's your actual seed. So, you know, watching them grow into the olive tree and, you know, they branch out through their personality, and then they go and take the things you taught them and they do righteous within their community. You know, relationships the same way, friendships and romantic relationships. You know, it's just funny how one topic in the Bible can always, you know, spread so far to so many mediums within life.
Yeah, that's all praises for sure. It's all about that fruit. So you had some more?
I think that's what I got for now. I'm gonna let you take over, man.
Okay, so I've been in Jeremiah, and it's been Jeremiah. You know, those don't know Jeremiah who haven't read the book of Jeremiah, it talks a lot about, you know, pretty much the judgment of Babylon. You know, Jeremiah, he was warning the people, you know, telling Israel to essentially come back to the Lord. He was telling them to repent of their sins. He was basically a whistleblower. You know, he was a whistleblower telling everybody what they was doing wrong, what the Lord was telling him what was inevitably gonna happen to Babylon, and, you know, all of the other nations that was practicing paganism and everything like that. You know, Jeremiah went through a lot of different things in his time whistleblowing. You know, he sat up there and actually did some time. They locked him up for a period and all sorts of stuff. But I'm actually in Lamentations, so this is kind of like I can't think of that word when it's like a story and then the story end and then it'd be like a little, I ain't gonna say filler arc, but like
an
epilogue.
Yeah,
Epilogue.
Epilogue.
Lamentations is kind of like an epilogue. So I'm gonna just read it because this whole little string was worth talking about, because when I read Jeremiah, it just jump off the page and screams the stuff that's going on today, and it gives you a peep. You can essentially read this and peep into what the future of America will actually be like in the coming years. So I'm gonna just read this, and this is actually the last chapter of this book. So I'm gonna just see where we just go through and see how they close. But it says, remember, O Lord, what has come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach. Our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens. We are orphans and fatherless. Our mothers are as widows. So we could just stop right there. That'll already jump off the page to what we see going.
Been disobedient to God. So, you know, those are the things. Those are the reasons we go through these tribulations. But like I said, we supposed to be counting on God for our daily bread, but we count on politics. You know, we count on celebrities being leaders in our community, specifically a quote unquote black community, right? You know, we counting on all of these other nations for our bread, and hence why, you know, our next, you know, we pressure through persecution.
And this is a Bible verse that also talk about that. Like, talk about being basically, essentially talks about a man being fed by like another man, like a man providing for your household. And essentially that's kind of like what we all are under. That's the curse. You know, it talks about that curse of just, if these people was to sit up there and shut down the grocery stores, if they was to shut down, I tell people all the time, when they be like, well, what's wrong with, you know, what's wrong with, actually vertical, because I'm gonna sit up there and,
oh, you gonna change it over?
Yeah, I'm gonna like combine them.
Okay. So but if this one horizontal, and then
I ain't even probably gonna use that. I'm probably just gonna use this and that.
Okay, all right, bet. That makes sense.
But yeah. So if you sit up there, what I'm saying, it's a part of our. It's really a part of our curse to sit up there and have to be provided for by another man. And I sit up there and ask people when they be like, okay, well, what's the problem with having to sit up there? What's the problem with sitting up there having to, you know, get fed by the government? You know, because people really say this type of stuff. They don't really see an issue with the current state of society. They see this as normal. Like, okay, this is America. We live here, and, you know, dead. But this is America. We live here, and everything should be cool. But in actuality, it's like, okay, boom. If they sit up there and shut down the grocery store and shut down all the fast food, you know, how would a lot of y'all eat? You know, it'd just be over with. You know, most men don't know how to sit up there and go hunt, go plant, go do anything. Most people in general don't know how to do none of that stuff. So if they was to just be like, all right, no more grocery stores, we closing them all down. If they was to be like, all right, no more fast food, you know, we closing that all down. You know, a lot of people would just die. Like, literally probably just die of starvation, because you don't know how to get food. You literally don't know how to get food unless you got your government daddies putting the food on your plate, keeping the grocery stores open where they can put a bunch of fake processed food in there for you to go get, and all sorts of other stuff in the fake food that's in the fast food. We don't even know what that is in there, but that's our daily bread. We constantly having to rely on them, and the Most High wants us to rely on Him.
It's really just about giving them control. It's like, you got to kind of look at it like this. Would you ever allow somebody to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna pay for your rent or your mortgage, I'm gonna pay for all of your food, you know, I'm gonna pay for you to be transported, but you got to do whatever I say.
Right.
So if I tell you, you know, go do X, Y, and Z, and that's against your moral conscience, then that person can be like, all right, well, if you don't do it, you're not gonna eat. You're not gonna have nowhere to live. You're not gonna, you know, none of that. So basically, that's the detriment in putting your faith in the system that we have. It just, at any point they can pull the rug from under our feet. And if you just look at the current climate, like I said, we went over the scriptures of basically talking about, you know, we labor and get no rest. Just simple stuff like that. You know, older people having their inheritance taken from them after working their whole lives. Like, that really, I'm not gonna say only, but by majority, it affects the lower level of people and people in the lower echelon of life. So if they gonna treat the people like that, this, you know, basically, you know, if there is no company if there's nobody to work for it. right?
Exactly.
And the lower level of people just tend to be workers, right? So if they're gonna treat the people that helped build all of these conglomerates, this whole country, you know, and these businesses like that, what do you think they're gonna do? What do you think they're gonna do on a grander scale? So that's just what it, you know, the solution is just to definitely just become self-sustaining, you know, gain knowledge of how to do certain things, agricultural things, medicinal things, carpentry work, stuff like that, how to build, how to plant seeds, how to hunt, all of that type of stuff, man. We got to get back to the roots, for sure. And, you know, it's a process, you know, it's a lot of chains to be broken, and it's a lot of lethargicness and a lazy spirit to overcome. You know, a lot of us are stagnant. You know, I can even say, even for myself, I be feeling like I can do more a lot of the time, but you take it day by day, and it's just about making that effort to get that knowledge and you know, putting that knowledge into play, man. We hear people all the time at the barber shops off the corner saying, oh, they doing this, man, they got impositions against us and we need to come together, but nobody ever want to come together. But it's been done before. It's been done. You know, groups like the Black Panthers, Civil Rights Movement. It's been done before.
That's their favorite lines. You know, black people can't ever come together. They just say black people can't come together, or they be like, we need to just come together.
It's been done before.
We need to come together. We need to come together. And I sat up there and had a dude tell me, you know, say something like that at a barbershop. And then I told him about, you know, our land initiative and the things that we got going on with UP Farms. And he was like, well, I don't know. Is the paperwork right? Is the this and that right? This right? I'm like, it's like people don't really want the solution. They like the idea of knowing what to do more than actually doing what you need to do. You know, because people are essentially comfortable. They think that this stuff is gonna last them forever, and you know, it's only a matter of time, as we're seeing, you know, it's only a matter of time before judgment comes to this place, because this place is wicked. You know, it's going downhill. These people are, you know, orphans. You know, a lot of these people are orphans. They don't know the Most High. They don't know their Father. So, you know, we're surrounded by a lot of orphans.
It's funny. It was a video I got sent to me on Instagram. It was a guy. He was basically talking about our people, and he was talking about how, you know, we have people in our community where it's like anytime you like bring up something positive about our people or something about building and getting out of a situation, I know you dealt with these people and seen them. It's like every time you bring it up, they always be like, well, I don't think we can do that, or it's always just a can't do mindset.
Yeah.
And it's
but if this
and it's funny because, you know, like I've been rewatching the Boondocks recently, and the beauty of that show is like each of the characters represents a personality, like that they trait within our people. Like you got Huey the revolutionary, Riley is like the ignorant type, you know, Granddad, he like the person that moved out
in his ways.
Yeah, stuck in his ways, moving out to the burbs to impress the white man or the Gentiles and whatnot. Then you got Ruckus, the actual incarnate of self-hate, and I would think like people like that would fall under the Ruckus spirit or the Granddad spirit. You know, like, man, nothing can be done. We just need to come together with them and hope stuff go right. or like Ruckus, you niggas, like just like it's crazy.
Niggas can't come together.
We'll never come together type beat, just self-hatred. So yeah, man, you just gotta steer clear from them people if you know when you talk, and that go into planting seeds, and you know also casting pearls before swine, doing stuff within having balance with what you do. Because like I said, those will be the solutions, tangible solutions, but it's gonna be naysayers, you know, it's gonna be people who don't believe, like I said, in the initiative.
And they against that, 'cause that's what Christ was talking about. Christ was talking about, you know, gather yourselves together. You know, he was saying once they start, we was talking about the Romans, so if they start coming in that mug, you gotta sit up there and flee to the mountains. So he was telling people to, you know, essentially prepare and do different things and bring themselves together and pull yourself up off your own bootstraps in order to actually find salvation. You know, that's what Christ was preaching. So if everybody turned on him and everybody was against him, then you can only imagine that you sitting up there preaching the same things that he was preaching, as far as us coming together and us providing for ourselves. you know, they're gonna sit up there and they're gonna ridicule you. They're gonna sit up there and persecute you. And, you know, you're supposed to count it all joy when that happens, because they say, you know, you're gonna be hated for his name's sake. So, yeah, when people have that spirit on them, or that spirit of just keeping everybody divided in division, you know, those are the people that's going to inevitably get chipped up because they rely on the system too much.
They the people, if we going back to the olive tree, you know, they the people that get cut off.
Facts.
They the people that get cut off. They, you know, separate the wheat from the tare.
They ain't gonna make it. They gonna end up having this. They gonna end up selling out. So, you know, definitely heavy on us coming together. I'm gonna sit up there and it goes on to say, servants have ruled over us. There is none that doth deliver us out of their hand. And there's nobody's gonna come for them. You know, when it was time to judge these people back then, you know, they was crying out. You seen they was crying out like, oh, we don't got our fathers, we don't have our mothers, our widows. Everything is just messed up. And, you know, but this was the judgment. You know, the Most High, he say, you know, he's gonna laugh at the calamity of the wicked. So, you know, he's a gracious God. He has grace and mercy on us. And, you know, but it says, shall I continue to sin? May grace be abound, God forbid. So when it's time to actually judge, you know, it ain't gonna be no, you know, no second chances or no like, oh, he gonna, oh, well, I changed my mind. Y'all had enough. You know, if he's putting belt to butt, you know, he's not gonna stop. You know, he ain't gonna stop. So then it goes on to say, we get our bread with the peril of our lives because of the sword of the wilderness. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. It's gonna be famine coming to this place. When they sit up there and make bread $20 a loaf, you know, it's gonna be inevitably, it's gonna be famine. And then you're gonna start seeing, once that hit, you're gonna see people act out. You know, I just was watching one of the brothers yesterday, I forget his name, but I remember their channel is like, I think it's the Knights of the Wilderness, I believe is their channel. But he was talking about the type of stuff you're gonna see people do that your own family's gonna do when it's no food and people got kids and their kids is hungry and stuff like that. You're gonna see your own family sit up there and start trying to do little shady stuff to you know, God forbid y'all, but you know, you're gonna see family turn on family. You're gonna see people be different people when they sit up there. When they hungry, he was saying like the Snickers commercial, when they say you're not you when you hungry, eat a Snickers. Like, you're gonna see a lot of people turn into different people because they hungry, it's famine, they ain't got no food, they kids, you know, stomachs is, the ribs is starting to show. They gonna start wilding out. And then, you know, I said this in one of my videos a while ago. This was a controversial take, but I said you're gonna see people eat each other. Like, I'd imagine it'd get like that. You would see people literally start having to cannibalize each other on some timing. And you know, that's the sick reality. But that's all of this wickedness, again, it just comes from veering off. So this is the judgment. This is the type of stuff that they go through, that they went through. But it says, our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. They ravished the women in Zion and the maids in the cities of Judah. So the women are being ravished. Again, when we get into a time like that where it's just messed up, famine, all of that type of stuff, people is gonna be breaking into these houses and they gonna be getting into the women. It's gonna get like that. The women used to be the spoils of war. So if there ever is anything like that that hit this land, then you better believe that the women are gonna be targets, you know. And the women, and a lot of you women that's out there with no husband, you know, you don't need a man for nothing. It sound good right now, but let's hit the fan. You know, you're gonna be singing a different tune, because when them people start running into them houses and you ain't got no protection, you ain't got nobody there to look out for you, you're gonna wish you had a man. So, you know, you better cut them games out.
Yeah, get with a righteous brother, man.
They ravished the women in Zion and the maids in the cities of Judah. Princes are hanged up by their hand. The faces of elders were not honored. The faces of the elders wasn't honored. They old people too. Old people is not safe. They don't care. They took the young men to grind and the children full, and the children fell under the wood. They took the young men to grind, and the children fell under the wood. I don't really know what that means, but it don't sound good for the children. The elders have ceased from the gate, the young men from their music. The elders have ceased from the gate, the young men from their music. The joy of our heart is ceased, our dance is turned into mourning. The joy of our hearts are ceased, our dances have turned into mourning. The crown is fallen from our head, woe unto us that we have sinned. So they understand that they messed up. But, you know, again, like I said, it's too late. It's judgment time. For this our heart is faint, and for these things our eyes are dim. Because of the mountain of Zion, which is desolate, the foxes walk upon it. Thou, O Lord, remainest forever, thy throne from generation to generation. Wherefore dost thou forget us? Wherefore dost thou forget us forever and forsake us so long time? Turn thou us unto thee, O Lord, and we shall be turned. Renew our days as of old. But thou hast utterly rejected us. Thou art very wroth against us. So yeah, like I said, this is, if you ain't really understand that, they basically, like I was saying, they was basically trying to, you know, plead to the Lord. Like, you really, like, you putting us through all of this stuff, and, you know, they just basically, you know, pleading, and they saying they grievances that they going through all of this stuff. You know, the Zion is going through all of this stuff. But like I said, you know, it just is what it is, y'all. It just is what it is. It's judgment time. When the Lord's judgment comes and he's doing his thing, you know, move aside. Like, people was talking about like, when you look at those fires in LA and all of that type of stuff, like, when you start seeing stuff like that, that's the Lord's judgment. And, you know, we are not to even feel bad when the Lord is judging. It just is what it is. It just is what it is. Move out the way, and then just pray and continue to seek a lifestyle. Pray and continue to have a lifestyle that seeks repentance.
Pray you don't fall into those things.
So when judgment comes, you ain't the one in the mix. So
it's gonna happen regardless. That's just it. Everybody not gonna make it, you know. So, you know,
you're not. Two-thirds of our people is doomed to get cut off. That's the vast majority. So, you know.
Yeah, and the better way to say it is most people not gonna make it. That's just a fact. But, you know, the blessing we have and the knowledge and the blessing we have amongst ourselves, you know, and as chosen and elect is, you know, we can choose, you know, to be a part of the select few that are saved, that are, you know, that make it through these trials and tribulations.
Facts.
You know, and that come with dedication, that come with, like I said, being obedient and whatnot. But yeah, going back into, you know, spreading the word and planting them seeds, that goes back into that, you know, plant your seed, move on. You know, don't spend too much time on particular people. You know, let it fester and grow, and whoever it grow in, and garnish those things. You know, it is what it is.
Facts. And on that note, you know, that was a good little session. We will be doing this again at some point. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, shout out to all of y'all that tapped in, that was in the live. I know the live ended abruptly. We had some difficulties, but I'm gonna sit up there and splice all of this stuff together, and yeah, we're gonna get it right. So that's the video for today. You know, it's me, Born Row, chosen one, God's chosen son.
Yeah.
Signing out. Let y'all take care, stay safe. I'm on y'all boys.
This that reality shit.